Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2021 Ford Ranger, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Brake-Lite Relay Kit for towed vehicles. But before we do that, why don't we kind of just talk about what it does and why it's a good idea to use one. A brake-light relay is a lot of times one of those things that are kind of overlooked and forgot about, but actually does make a big difference. It kind of makes a job or your flat tow setup 100% complete and allow everything to work the way it should. And the reason that the Ranger needs one is because the brake light signal will override the turn signal. So just to kind of build up a scenario here, because a lot of people, this can be kind of confusing. So I'll do my best to put it in simple terms. So say without a brake light relay, right? You did not have one installed and you were hooked up and you were flat towing down the road. Let's say if you went up to a stoplight and you were trying to turn left. So you got your blinker on and your brakes on at the same time. Well, what's going to happen back here is the brake light signal is going to override your turn signal. So back here you won't have any blinkers going. You'll just have two brake lights lit up. And then on the motorhome, your left turn signal will be going and the other lights will be brake lights the way it should. That's how things are supposed to work. And so it can get a little confusing. You know, people behind you might not know what's going on, right? Especially now, you get a lot of distracted people that hardly pay attention anyway. This kind of just adds to the mix there. And so by adding a brake light relay, it's going to solve that issue. Whenever you have the turn signal going while you're on the brakes at the same time, that brake light relay is going to allow that signal to be transferred back here to our Ranger. So now that we kind of understand what the problem is, I'll hop up in our motorhome, hit the brakes and have our turn signal going, just so you can actually see and get a visual on what the brake light relay actually does. So here inside the motorhome, we can kind of show what's going on. I want to mention too the way that we recommend hooking these up. You are going to have your tail lights on for this to work properly, which most newer motorhomes already have that kind of preset, but probably a good idea to do that anyway if you're towing. But with that said, say if I hit my brakes, so both of my brake lights will be illuminated, and now if I turn on my left turn signal, that blinker will actually go through and be set up the way it should, as opposed to having the blinker going in the motorhome and just having brake lights at the back of our Ranger. Other than that though, that's really about it. Not a whole lot to it. In terms of getting it hooked up, it's really not too bad. There's 4 wires you have to hook up. I'd say probably the worst part is just working underneath the dash. Not a whole lot of space under there, but it doesn't take very long and really shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues. If you'd like to see how that's done though, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage and hook it up together now. To begin our installation for our brake light relay, we're going to be here working on the driver's side, kind of underneath the dash. And I want to mention, it's going to make it a lot easier. So there's a plastic panel here that you can pop down and 2 plastic fasteners that hold it in. Just pop that off. And then if you pull this off too, that just bolts on there with 4 8mm head bolts. So you can get that out of the way. It just really opens things up, makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. But with that in mind, here's our brake light relay right there. So I just zip tied it to this factory bundle of wire, and then we're going to have 4 wires that we need to hook up. So if you look at the bottom of the relay though, there will be 5 wires. One of them we're not going to be using, and that is the green wire. So I just cut that in half and taped it up. I want to mention there's 2 sets of instructions for these. One's with push button start and one's with keyed start. Regardless of what setup you have on your Ranger, you want to wire it up in a way to where it's the push button start. And that's because we've had some issues in the past with them, and this is a better solution, just more reliable. So even if you have a keyed ignition, wire it up this way, wire it up like the push button start. So with that said, we'll kind of just go through one by one. So we'll have a black wire, a blue wire, a red wire, and a white wire. We'll start with the white wire. That's going to be a ground. And so I simply just ran that over towards the center console, where there's actually several ground screws, factory grounds, and I utilized one of them. So I just crimped on a ring terminal, put the ring terminal over one of those factory grounds by removing, obviously you got to remove the bolt. It's 8mm, pull it out, put the ring terminal over it, and tighten the bolt back down. The blue and black wire coming from our relay, that's going to tap into our factory brake light signal. So there's our brake light switch. The factory purple wire with the white stripe, white and purple wire, that's going to be our brake light signal. So you cut that wire in half, strip back the ends of the insulation, and then the black wire from the relay, it's going to connect to the side of our factory wire that's running towards the back of our vehicle. So just use a butt connector to pair them together. And the blue wire from our BrakeLite relay, that's going to be running to the factory wire that goes right to the switch. So again, just a butt connector, and that will complete that circuit. Lastly, the red wire coming off of our relay, that needs to get connected to the tail light or running light signal from our existing diode wiring or tow bar wiring. And I made that connection underneath the hood. A lot of people probably do the same thing, have it set up similarly. But with that said, obviously we need to extend the wire to get out there. So using a butt connector, I crimped on another wire and ran that out into the engine compartment. So it drops down under the dash, and then towards the outside of the truck, up on the firewall, there will be a grommet you can utilize to push the wire through. So here's a look at that grommet, and chances are pretty good you're already gonna be familiar with this anyway if you're at this point in the install, setting up your flat tow. So run that through there, and we can make the connection under the hood. Now in the engine compartment, our red wire comes out through the grommet and just runs along through here. It's kind of buried. You might be able to see a piece or two of it here and there, but you get the idea. Just run straight up through here. And this is where it ties into our diode wiring. So you want to tie into the taillight signal, which is the brown wire on our existing diode wiring. Cut that in half. One side of the diode wiring, put on a butt connector. The other side, I stripped the wires back, twisted our BrakeLite relay wire and the other end of the brown wire together, put them in one end of the butt connector, and crimped everything down. And once you have that last wire hooked up, you can go ahead and put your panels back together the opposite way that you removed them. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Brake-Lite Relay Kit for towed vehicles on our 2021 Ford Ranger.